Hey everyone, in honor of the recent release of the first Hunger Games movie, I'm going to talk to you today about things you can read when you finish reading the Hunger Games series. If one of your favorite things about the Hunger Games was the political dystopian themes, I would recommend The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It was released in 1985. The Handmaid's Tale is described as taking place in the near future, which that's the near future based on its release date of 1985. I always kind of imagined it taking place probably somewhere in the late 90s/early 2000s. In order to restore order to the country after a staged terrorist attack, the U.S. Constitution is suspended, and in place of the U.S. government, a totalitarian theocracy is created and renamed the Republic of Gilead. In Gilead, there is a really strict hierarchy of social class. Women are basically at the bottom of the social class across the board. They have no rights. They don't have the right to own property, have money, anything like that, and they're also not allowed to read. This book is a first-person narration, and it is told from the perspective of the character of Offred, who is a handmaid. Handmaids in this universe, basically, their entire function is to serve as a vessel for reproduction. They are basically the lowest class of female citizens. Offred is in her third assignment as a handmaid, and this is her final chance to actually produce an heir, otherwise she's going to become a cast-off citizen. A lot of the themes in this book revolve around women's rights and religious extremism. If that's something that interests you, it's definitely worth checking out. If you're looking for a young adult alternative to The Handmaid's Tale, Eve by Anna Carey, which came out last fall, kind of has some similar themes, but it's probably a little bit easier to digest for some people. Both are very enjoyable books, and I highly recommend both of them. If you like graphic novels, after finishing Mockingjay, I would highly suggest checking out V for Vendetta, which was written by Alan Moore. It was released in the late 80s, I believe it was 1988 specifically. As the result of a nuclear war which caused a complete socioeconomic collapse of the Western world, there was a fascist regime which was able to put itself into power in London, and they ended up creating a complete totalitarian police state. The police state that was created in the United Kingdom is one that also came with things like concentration camps, and the main character V actually came out of one of these concentration camps, and because of his experience, he becomes a revolutionary. The way he strikes out against the government in this situation is meant to be very showy and very public and really get people's attention, because he's trying to drive people to act. He doesn't want to be acting alone. He wants people to see that there is something wrong and that there's something to fight against, and that they are the ones that can do the fighting if they choose to do it. One of the things I find particularly terrifying about this situation is specifically the way that Alan Moore presents it. It is a completely plausible storyline that you can see how this would easily happen in our world, which I think is another thing that offers itself well with The Handmaid's Tale. The Hunger Games is a little bit further in the future, so both of these stories tend to have a little bit more immediacy to them. One of the things I particularly enjoyed about The Hunger Games was the balance between action and a thought-provoking story, and one series that to me really mirrors that is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. Divergent came out last year in 2011. It's the first book in, I believe, what's going to be a trilogy. This series takes place in a dystopian Chicago. It's unclear how far in the future this actually is, although it is far enough that Lake Michigan has turned into a giant marsh bed. There is absolutely no lake there anymore. In the world of the Divergent series, people have broken themselves down into 5 factions, kind of based on what value they think is most important to the human race when it comes to establishing a balanced, peaceful society. The 5 factions are Abnegation, which stands for selflessness; Candor, which values honesty; Erudite, which values knowledge; Amity, which values peacefulness; and Dauntless, which values bravery and courage. At the age of 16, anyone in this society goes through a test which tells you which faction you are most suited to, whether it is the one you were raised in or another faction, and then you go through a choosing ceremony where you decide which faction you're going to live out the rest of your life with. When Divergence starts, the main character, Beatrice, who later becomes known as Triss, is going through this process, and she ends up choosing to go from Abnegation, in which she was raised, to Dauntless. The main parts of this story follow Triss as she's going through the initiation process at the Dauntless facility. She is constantly struggling with trying to identify who her true allies and enemies actually are, and also struggling to come to terms with the fact that she actually made this decision to switch factions. As you get closer towards the end of the book, you learn along with Triss about some of the things that are going on behind the scenes at some of the factions, and really learning what's truly going on in this society and kind of how messed up it kind of is. It's no secret that there is a trend towards dystopian literature, specifically in the young adult world, ever since the release of the Hunger Games book series. It's kind of like the trend towards vampire novels when the Twilight series came out. One of the great things about it is if you do really enjoy dystopian literature, there's a lot to choose from, and you have the ability to be really picky about the types of stuff you read, so you can really find stuff that appeals to not only your dystopian sensibilities, but perhaps things that have other themes that you really enjoy. So it's definitely worth doing a little bit of research into varying kinds of dystopian literature and finding what you really like, and just exploring a ton of different stuff. If you like the sounds of these and are maybe looking for a little bit something else to look into as well, I would suggest Delirium by Lauren Oliver and The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, which are two different young adult dystopian society series. I would also suggest Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury and 1984 by George Orwell. Classics are always good to check out. They're a classic for a reason. The next thing I'm going to be checking out is Legend by Marie Lu. I've heard a lot of really good things about it. It's a young adult novel that came out last year. Super excited. I will let you guys know what I think of it once I'm finished. I hope I was able to introduce you to something that you maybe haven't checked out in the past. If you've read any of these books, or if you have other suggestions for things people could read if they enjoyed the Hunger Games, leave me a message down below or hit me up on Twitter or Tumblr, and I will see you guys soon.